Good afternoon. I'm Marcus Smith, and today I'm going to be presenting privacy of consumer financial information and the credit union's regulation in notifying their members of that privacy information, and then what all happens with that. So there's a lot of stuff that obviously it deals with acts, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act and NCUA's Part 716 of their rules and regulations. That's kind of not the fun stuff. Not that this is great and entertaining information, but it's something we need to know. So why do we want privacy? Why do we want to? Why is privacy important? Well, because of identity theft. And let's think about what identity theft is. It's the stealing of someone's name, social security number, credit card number, or some other piece of their personal information for criminal purposes without their knowledge to commit fraud. Has anybody out there had their identity stolen? Or do you know of anybody that's had their identity stolen? If you do, then you know why this is pretty important stuff and why it needs to be kept protected. So let's think about public information that is protected once it comes into the credit union. This same information sometimes is available in a phone book, a person's name, their phone number, or their address. But when it comes from a member and it comes in on a loan application or when they fill out their signature card, that's when it becomes protected information. And so we are not allowed to give that information out. So who is covered? Ask this question of yourself. Who's covered? Anybody? Well, everyone. Every member is covered. Even the former members that no longer have their account open with us, no longer have a loan with us that's closed, those members are still protected. We just don't actually have to send them notices anymore. Also the members that interact with us through electronic means, through whether it's going to the website and getting their financial information that way, or if they do come into the branch or branches, every time. And even consumers, the consumers that no longer have an ongoing relationship with the credit union, or of course the members, those who do have an ongoing relationship. Well, how do we define consumers that don't have an ongoing relationship? We look at those people like co-signers of loans that weren't really members, they just happen to be co-signers of applicants, or sometimes non-members that are recipients of wire transfers. And then we also look at, who would want this information? Who's trying to get this information? Well, it's all about third parties, affiliated and unaffiliated third parties. Let's look. We want to talk about those definitions. So unaffiliated third parties, with the exceptions under the law, people like the government, credit bureau, the FBI, we can provide that information. We can give member information to those if we were contacted. Unaffiliated third parties that are not excluded or not exempt under those rules, people like telemarketing companies, and that's who really is kind of this notice is about. If credit unions are sharing or selling information to those unaffiliated third parties, well, then they have to give their members the right to opt out, meaning we don't share that that member has the right to say we don't want that information shared. What kind of information would they want? Of course, age, income, phone numbers, date of birth, all of that. And those consumers need to be able to opt out of giving that information out. So let's take a step back and let's be clear about our purpose here. What are we trying to do? Well, we're trying to use member information only as the member wants it. And keeping that information secure is a top priority for all credit union employees. I think we all need to remember that it's up to every employee, and you've got to treat that information just like you would want your own information treated. So the purpose of the Privacy Act is to safeguard that non-public personal information of individuals who obtain financial products or services for personal, family, and household purposes. Now, keep in mind, we still need to treat members' information as you would want yours treated. You don't want to give it out to people. You don't want to leave it laying on a desk. You don't want to, just have it readily available for somebody that wants to use it in a bad way. Who must comply with the rule? Well, any financial institution that provides financial products or services to customers. Now, you notice that we use the term customer there. And everybody, is jumping up and down in credit union land. Oh my gosh, he said customer. Well, keep in mind, the rule or the act talks about customer, and it refers to customer not, in a broad sense, because it's talking about all financial institutions. Member is an industry term, and we'll look at that later in the CU 101 coming up in a bit, and those industry terms that we talk about. So the initial privacy notice. Well, the notice needs to be clear and conspicuous and accurately reflect the credit union's privacy policies and practices to all members not later than when the member relationship is established. What does that mean? Well, the initial notice needs to be given at the time the account is opened. And then it needs to be given annually. And annually, unless there is a change. So if the credit union merges, then that notice would need to go out again because it's changing. Or if the credit union went from not sharing member information to all of a sudden they're going to share member information to an unaffiliated third party that is not exempt under the rules. So what does the notice say? Well, in a nutshell, if your credit union does or does not share information with unaffiliated third parties. If they do share information, members have the right to opt out of that information being shared. Now, obviously the notice is inclusive of a lot of legal jargon, but that's it in a nutshell. Now, can anybody out there answer who does the notice need to be made available to? Well, the answer is anyone. Even a non-member. If they walk into the credit union and walk up to a teller and say, can I see a copy of your privacy notice? You need to give them a copy of it. So just remember, anyone, it needs to be made available to anyone. So what are the requirements? Well, the requirements kind of deal with what we talked about previously. In a nutshell, it's just who you're sharing information with or who you're not sharing information with, and then giving that opt-out right. Then we also need to think about how it's being delivered. Well, there's ways that it needs to be delivered. Now, some of these are going to, obviously not be very practical for credit unions. Hand deliver a printed copy of the notice to the consumer. Nobody's going to walk door to door to every single member and give that notice away. Mail a printed copy of the notice to the last known address of the consumer. That's probably what most of us do. Now, there's also those people that only deal with our institution or our credit union through electronic means. They only go to the website. They only do web-based, excuse my language, banking. And those electronic transactions, well, we have to post that notice to the website, and then we need to require that the consumer acknowledge receipt of the notice as a necessary step to obtaining any particular financial product or service. On an ATM transaction, we need to be able to post that notice to an ATM screen and require the consumer to acknowledge receipt of the notice as a necessary step to obtaining a particular financial product or service on an ATM machine. Then we're also going to have those subsequent notices. Well, the subsequent notices are dealing with, if there is a merger that takes place, or the change from sharing information to not sharing information to sharing information. So let's look a little further at what must the notice include? What needs to be in the notice? Well, there's a few basic points. Information collected. This is the categories of non-public personal information the credit union collects. Information disclosed. The categories of non-public personal information the credit union discloses. So they need to have in there that they disclose information to the credit bureau, and if they happen to give information to a, say a telemarketing company or, companies such as that. And then, which deals with the third parties. Now, if they do share that information with an unaffiliated third party that is not exempt, meaning the FBI or the government, then they have to have an opt-out, and that explanation of the opt-out right. That needs to include the method of opt-out for the consumer, and it deals with the consumer and the member. So, people that don't have an ongoing relationship with the credit union, and then members, those who do have an ongoing relationship. So basically, again, the member has the right to say, don't share my information, and that's that opt-out. It also, has a lot of more, a lot of other legal jargon in it. It has some things about FACT Act, the Fair and Accurate Credit Transaction Reporting Act, so it's got some language in there. And part of the FACT Act deals with giving that information to the member that we do share information with the credit bureau. When we're looking at your credit score, that's who we're sharing information with, is the credit bureaus. And that's where that comes in, is under the FACT Act part. It's going to have the credit union's policies and practices with respect to protecting the confidentiality and security of non-public personal information. And then it has typically a general statement that the credit union makes disclosures to other non-affiliated third party as permitted by law. So, can anybody out there tell me, if a member walks in and asks for a privacy notice, do you know where to find one? It's something to definitely think about, because everybody needs to know where that is. So, there are no record retention requirements under the rules. But what we do need to know is that the credit union has to prove that the notice has been sent out. So if an NCUA examiner walks in and says, I need to know how you're getting that to the consumers, and I need you to show me how you're getting it to them, we probably need to be able to prove it to NCUA or any other government agency that happens to ask about it. So if nobody has any questions, we will move on to the wonderful world of information security.